Greetings, adventurers. I am back home. Today, I'd like to talk about some of my previous LARP characters and address a major problem that I've had personally. And I'm hoping that it can help some of you who may have had this problem as well. My problem, my chronic problem with most role-playing characters that I've had, whether it's for a LARP or for something like a tabletop role-playing game, or even for a video game like Skyrim, anything where you get to create your own character, come up with your own backstory, your own goals and motivations. The problem that I've had is that I can never stick to one thing. I am very easily wowed and awed and influenced into wanting to try a different character or a different build. Oh, that looks cool, I want to try that, and I never just stick to one thing. It's like I'm just never satisfied with the character that I've chosen to play, and I always feel the need to either create a new one or morph one that I'm already playing into something else in order to fulfill, I don't know, something. I haven't figured it out, so that's what this video was for. And it's especially weird because I don't have that problem in real life. I am very comfortable with who I am in real life. I don't, on a daily basis, wish that I was somebody else. So it's odd that I have that problem when I'm making my characters. So the first character that I ever made, way back when I first started LARPing, I was 14 years old. This was back in 2012 or 2013 or something. First character I ever made was a ranger named Horace Amons. I don't even remember specifically what backstory or whatever I wrote for him, but I know that he was a ranger. I had a bastard sword, and I brought my LARP bow and my LARP arrows. And that first experience I can't really judge that one because it was my first LARP ever. I really didn't know what I was getting into. I never used my bow once because I realized very quickly that I just didn't like the idea of archery in a LARP. I just didn't want to lose the arrows, essentially. I wanted to actually sword fight. During that period, I got influenced by probably some animes I was watching at the time or something, and I wanted to make a warlock character because I guess wanted to be edgy. So I never really made a warlock character, a spell sword that could cast, just because I don't know, I never really wanted to fully embrace the long trench coat. But the thought did cross my mind. And I also wanted to do a shinobi style character, because of course I was in high school, I was watching Naruto, and I was oh, wouldn't it be cool if I had doing all these flips and I had 2 dual wielded wakizashis or something. And I never did that one either because I realized very quickly that what I had envisioned in my head was never gonna happen in real life, and that realistically using 2 23-inch little blades as a high school version of myself who was 5'5", it was just it was not going to be fun. So I didn't do that either. The next character I made was named Benjamin. I was watching Turn, Washington Spies at the time, so I wanted to make a cavalier style character, and I had a cutlass. I don't have the cutlass with me that I used. That was the next character I made. And I only ever got to play one game with him because then I went off to college and LARPing physically took a little bit of a backseat for me. I was still reading tons of different rule books and learning about the lore of lots of different games I was interested in going to, and making tons of new characters because I have an addiction to making new characters. And it was during this sort of break period, after being able to take a step back and really look at my experience. It was during this break period during college when I sort of realized that maybe part of my problem was that I was trying too hard to make a game system do something that it just wasn't ever going to be able to do. I was trying to change the game, or fit a character that didn't fit into the game system. That sort of mismatch was what was causing me to be dissatisfied with my characters, because I was envisioning myself being able to do certain things as a ranger or as a sword fighter or a duelist or whatever, and I wasn't actually able to do those things in the game. And I realized that maybe instead of trying to blame the game for that, it's my fault for not understanding what the engine of a LARP is actually capable of. And this all sounds very obvious, but remember that, in my teenage years, I didn't have a mentor in real life or anything. I didn't have anyone telling me what my expectations for a LARP should be or what I should try to do in order to have more fun. I didn't have any of that. So this hypothesis I came up with was that my dissatisfaction with my own characters was actually just a fundamental misunderstanding of what the LARP system I was playing in was supposed to be. And that meant that because my problem was actually not the fault of anyone else or the system, but rather my interpretation of how reality is, that meant that I had the power to fix that problem. So I decided that the solution to this problem would be to create a character that was inextricably tied to the lore and the rules of the game that I was playing. Again, this sounds very obvious in retrospect. So the next character that I was able to make a couple years ago was a character named Beryl Tolward. I went back to my roots as a ranger, and so Beryl was much more tied to the lore of this world. I looked at the faction he was from, I looked at what the faction had done, what they were supposed to be, and really tried to make sure that those two things gelled together to try to not turn the game into something else. I was going to play a ranger from this faction, his goals aligned with the faction he was from, he had character ties you know, his family's from this faction, like he has a lineage with it. So I was trying to not change the game. And this was the sword I used as Beryl as well. I have a video on this sword from Kalamazoo. I custom designed the dimensions and chose the handle and the blade that I wanted and all that. And at this point I did have the channel. So I had a little bit more of an excuse to be experimenting and trying new things out, because I would then be able to come back to you and say, hey, I think this works. Hey, I think this doesn't. So while I think this video about this sword is this like the perfect sword for an adventurer, while I think it's an interesting discussion starter, I now no longer believe that this is a very good sword design at all. It's really cool for like tricks. It's like nice and nimble and flashy, but the fact remains that the handle is far too long to be used one-handed, and the blade is far too short to be used two-handed. So while I was able to like get some cool trick shots off with it, like there's a reason why this sword didn't exist historically and why no one used a sword with a blade this short with a handle this long. It's because it doesn't really work. And I even brought my bow and my Larp arrows to try to see if maybe like my inexperience would allow me to have a better time this time, where I didn't have a good time with bow and arrows before. That ended up not being the case. So the same thing with the sword as with the bow. I realized that it's actually because I'm trying to do like Legolas style speed combat archery at a Larp, which is impossible. Not only because it's not safe and the rules oftentimes don't allow you to do that, but also because it's just really difficult to do that with Larp arrows. They're very heavy at the tips. You can't have that many of them. And so all of the things that I didn't like about Larp archery, I'm realizing are just like, again, me trying to force reality to bend to my will so that I can like be super cool and like shooting off multiple arrows. But that's never how archery was really done. Ever. It's not how archery is done in Larp. So, and the same thing with the sword, where I'm like trying so hard to just do anything different. I could have just used like a regular sword. I could have just I could have just stood in line with the rest of the archers like a normal boy and just like shot a couple arrows, and I would have had fun that way. So you will notice that like I made the same mistake again. I made the same mistake many years later, where it was a little bit more pernicious. It wasn't like me trying to like make myself Naruto or something in a game that didn't support it, but I was still not really fully grasping this idea of, no, just do things the way that they're supposed to be done. And you don't have to be like crazy about trying to like be the coolest person. I'm never gonna climb into the top of a tree and rain arrows down from the sky. I'm never gonna do a triple backflip and like have knives just fly out of my coat. It's cool to imagine. I can do it in D&D, but it's just not gonna happen in real life. It never happened in real life. It's not supposed to happen in real life. And so once again, I learned that I needed to curb my expectations even more, and not just ground myself in the lore of a world, that was part of it, but also ground myself in reality. So the next event I was gonna go to, I was still gonna play Beryl, and I was gonna play him as a full actual ranger. So I decided, no, you know what? If I'm gonna use a longsword, I'm gonna use like an actual longsword, like a real normal human being. I'm gonna have a longsword so that I don't feel under-equipped whenever I go to fight anyone. So I was gonna bring this sword, but then I saw the Northmen, which I loved. So of course I wanted to be a Viking immediately. That's what I did. I did a whole bunch of research into like Dark Ages and Viking culture. I then looked at a lot of the Rohirrim armor from the Lord of the Rings. They're not exactly Vikings, but I was like sort of going for that same sort of vibe. And I built myself an entire suit of leather armor that I felt would look good for a Rohirrim. I bought a new shield. I bought a new sword, a Viking sword from Kalamazoo that I had always wanted ever since I saw it. And I decided that this was going to be the moment. So I sort of like morphed Beryl into being a Viking. And the way that I was able to do that was that I had already written in Beryl's backstory that his mother was actually from the Viking faction instead of the Ranger faction. Again, you'll see that I was like, even with this character that I was trying so hard to like ground in the lore, I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I like pre-wrote myself a loophole just in case I wanted to be a Viking back when I first planned Beryl the Ranger, because I liked the Ranger aesthetic, but liked the culture of the Vikings. So I was never fully committed to the Ranger thing. I wanted to have everything all at once. So I was able to pivot around Beryl's mother being one of the Viking characters and had him be a Viking for the next event. And this event, I tried a new thing, which was not just to ground myself in the lore of the world and not just to ground myself in reality using a properly sized Viking sword with a properly sized Viking shield, planning to fight in a shield wall, not like trying to be like a super cool hero or everything, where every time my sword touches something, it just dies immediately, because that's not how real life works. And I know that logically. It won't stop my fantasy brain from wanting to like be the main character though. But I also went an extra step and realized I needed to not wait as long to make new character connections. I couldn't wait until the game had started to do that. So I got into contact with other players who I knew that our characters would probably know each other at this point to try to make those relationships before the game. And I can confirm that that did help a lot. Creating character relationships, linking your backstories, coming up with new things that your characters have done, not like pre-planning or metagaming, not pre-planning encounters or something, but just deciding, hey, I'm not the only person in this world, and it would make sense that my character would know this other person. Just knowing that ahead of time was really, really helpful. It made a lot of interactions easier, it made a lot of interactions more meaningful, and it made it easier to make choices as my character because I knew who I knew and I knew what those people already wanted. And that helps you avoid, every time you go to a LARP with a new character, it feeling like the first day of summer camp or something. But it didn't entirely solve the problem, because then I watched Outlander and I wanted to make a Highlander character instead. Like, I was more invested in Beryl, but I wasn't so invested that I was able to like look at other stuff and go, no, that's fine, I'm comfortable being Beryl. Whereas in real life, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm comfortable being Kramer. I didn't have that. I don't have that with the characters that I create for some reason. So that's why I got this. Because I was planning on making a new Highlander character. And I haven't played Duncan McDougal yet. And maybe I never will, because at this point I've been influenced by other things, and it's just, oh, it becomes so tiresome and so vexing, and honestly, at a certain point, really expensive when you are flip-flopping back and forth between all these characters, because I can't make up my mind. I'm going crazy. I'm an actor, I'm trained to do this, and I have never had this problem with a character that I've played on stage or like in short films or something. I don't have this problem when I'm actually doing my job as an actor. So why is it like so hard when it comes to LARPing? Well, the major difference is that when I'm playing a character on stage, one, I don't really get a choice. Like, I've been cast as a character. The only choice I get is really whether or not I'd like to audition for that character in the first place. And then if I get it, you know, I get the character. I'm playing a character, it has been written for me, the lines are all there, and it's my job to figure out how to play that character based on the text of the script, but it is, all that work is done for me. The work I have to do is figuring out what it says. That is fundamentally different from a LARP, because it ultimately doesn't matter how much lore about the world that I read, it doesn't affect who Beryl is, right, or who Horace is, or anything. That's lore about the setting. Everything else I have to write. And for some reason, it hasn't mattered how much connection I try to give him or how much stuff I try to give him. I just don't have that same connection. That's one of the things I found really intriguing about the Witcher LARP in Poland, which sadly has closed and I never got to go, but they would create your character for you and just tell you this is who you're playing. And that sort of eliminates the overwhelming number of options of all the choices that you can make when you're deciding who you want your character to be and what you want them to be able to do. They choose that for you and you just play it, and there's like, you know, there's like safety in having that choice be done for you. I did have fun playing Beryl Tolwart. It's not that I didn't have fun playing any of these characters. I had a good time at the LARPs doing all of this. It's not that the characters' backstories weren't written well. It's not that they weren't tied to the lore well once I figured out that that's really what I wanted to do. They're not poorly written characters. I just don't feel attached to them. And what I'm really searching for is being so happy and so comfortable and so confident as my own character that I'm not influenced by other stuff anymore, and that I don't have this like ADHD of cool character ideas where I'm like, oh, that person's doing that thing, that looks really cool, I want to do that. Or that guy has like this really cool weapon, that looks really effective, he's like winning every duel. Well, I want to make a character that uses that type of weapon. Like, I want to be so happy with the character that I create that I don't get distracted by other stuff. And then I really feel like an emotional connection, not as my character with other characters, that's easy, that's fine, but I want to have an emotional connection with my own character. The problem also clearly isn't my inability to create characters, because I've also helped a lot of my friends create characters and they've been very happy with them, they've had fun playing them. It's that I can tell the stories of other people perfectly fine. I just have trouble telling my own story, which is really annoying because it makes me feel very detached from the character that I've created for myself. And now I think the problem is this. I know who I am. I'm very happy being who I am. And when I am given a script and I'm supposed to play a character, I can easily identify what elements of me need to go into that character in order to make that character work, and what parts of me need to stay back because they don't really fit the character, and what new elements within me I might need to develop or exaggerate in order to play that character. And I have tried to reverse engineer that process when I've created my own LARP characters by picking elements of myself that I like or would like to exaggerate or that I would like to explore and making those the main elements of my new character. But I was picking those individual aspects of me, not the whole part of me, just like tiny little pieces and trying to build a new character around that. And it didn't really work because, again, I know who I am and I know who I could be, but the thing I don't really know how to answer is who I would like to be. Because who I would like to be is really the fundamental question that we are all asked when we are told to create a new character for something. Who would you like to be? You have all of these options, which is a fundamentally strange question to ask a person. Who else would you like to be? I mean, aside from who you already are, who else would you like to be? And oftentimes the answer to that can be very material. It can be, well, I would like to be somebody rich, or I would like to be someone who's very athletic, or I'd like to be someone who's very attractive. But those are all like what those people are, not necessarily who they are. And I think maybe that's part of the problem here, is that you're oftentimes told to choose like the species and the class of your character before you write their backstory. So I'm like picking all of these cool things. I mean, it's all cool. It's designed to be cool. I like swords, I like fantasy, it's all cool. Every option seems like a good option to me, but that doesn't mean that I'm having an emotional connection to it, because none of that is who I am choosing to be. It's just like what. But this really explains the problem that I'm having with this like chronic change syndrome with my characters, because I don't know who or what I would choose to be if given another option, because I like being me. I just want to be me somewhere else with swords. And I guess that sort of means that I've been spending so much time trying to like min-max a character or be an effective character. It's like, oh, I want to have this skill because I want to be able to like do this thing, and I need to have this portion, and I want to be part of this faction because it's all cool, that I never really sat down and wondered what I would do and gave myself like the chance to flourish and figure out who I would become in this new context. I just immediately went for, well, I have to be somebody else other than who I am. Not that every character you make has to be like a direct self-insert, but I'm just saying, if you've been having this problem, being distracted by everything and thinking everything is cool and wanted to do everything all at once, the solution might be to just be yourself, just maybe for a little bit. I mean, like, to a certain degree, all of the characters that I've made have been self-inserts, but they've been like lukewarm self-inserts, because doing a self-insert felt like wrong or bad to me, as if like just being myself and being happy with that was somehow the wrong avenue to go with LARP, because like then it's not really role-playing, is it? It is. And I think that that's fine. The problem is not my inability to play characters that aren't me. I can do that, but that's not what I want to do. I want to be myself. That's what I'm interested in exploring right now. I can play a drow cleric some other time. I could do it. I'm just like, the disconnect is that I want to play myself, but I haven't been doing that. And that doesn't mean that like I'm gonna go and literally just like be Kramer. My name will be Kramer, and I will make all of the same modern jokes that I do and talk about modern things. That's not what I'm saying. That's why this is still role-playing. Some things will have to change, but like the core elements of who I am, I'm not gonna pick and choose what I think fits into a better character. I'm just gonna be myself in this new world, in this new environment, because I can define all of the things about me that I like. I'm compassionate, I'm honest, I'm loyal, I can sometimes be very impulsive, I can anger very quickly. All of these things are who I am. That doesn't answer the question of what, which is class. So from the classic Dungeons and Dragons like rule sets, which a lot of LARPs are based off of, we can very quickly identify what doesn't fit with me and omit those things. I'm not a fighter. That doesn't mean I don't like fighting. That doesn't mean that I'm not good at it in the context that I am good at fighting. I'm just not a fighter. I'm not a cleric or a paladin. Same thing for like caster classes. I'm not a sorcerer or a warlock or anything. I've had maybe a passing interest in like the Wand Maker's Guide. I think it's right there. I enjoy like making my own wands, but that's mostly just because I like the woodworking and I think that it's like cool, but I've never really been interested in caster classes. I'm not a rogue because I'm not a criminal, but I'm also just not good at the things that rogues are really supposed to be good at traditionally. I'm not even a ranger, because if you gave me a knife and some rope and left me out in the wilderness for a month, I would die. I just don't have the skill set yet. Doesn't mean I don't want to learn it. Doesn't mean that the content on the channel is changing. Doesn't mean that this kit is going anywhere. I just don't have the skills really necessary to be a ranger yet. So what does that mean? What I really am in real life translated into a fantasy scenario is I'm a bard. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that I would be like a rogue with like a swashbuckler subclass or something, but like really, if I were to just take myself and put myself into a fantasy like D&D style universe, I would be a bard. I mean, I act, I sing, I dance. I've got a bachelor's degree in music. I like to entertain people. I like to inspire people. I like to tell stories. I think I'm really good at it. And so that's really what I fit. And the weapon that I am really the most comfortable with is a type of weapon or types of weapons that usually you would associate with a bard or a swashbuckler, because I'm most comfortable with this. I took many years of Olympic style fencing with epee and foil and saber. I liked saber the best, but this is the weapon that I'm most comfortable with. Even in my stage combat experience, I've taken tons of classes, but if you did a pie chart of all of the weapons experience that I have, rapier still ranks the highest just because it's the most commonly used thing in Shakespearean style acting. I don't even like the rapier that much, but it's still my go-to. If I feel intimidated or outmatched by an opponent, if I'm at a LARP or something, my go-to, like, screw it, let's fight on guard stance is a rapier stance. It's what I like. It's what I go to. It's where my instincts are. The funny thing is, I've only ever played like a bard or a musketeer or something style character once for like a one-shot D&D session that only lasted like 2.5 hours. And I've never done it again, and I've never done it since. And the reason that I told myself and the reason I told other people why I wasn't really interested in playing a bard was just because it felt so obvious, given that I'm like a musical theater actor. It felt so obvious that I felt like I had to do something else in order to be interesting or in order to be unique. But through writing out what would eventually become the script for this video, what I realized was that actually it's because it's so close to me that I didn't want to play a bard. That's true, but it's actually because like I'm afraid. It's because it is so close to who I am as an actual person that I feel like if I don't do a good job or like live up to expectations for the people that are like, oh, Kramer, you'd be like a really good bard, you should play a bard. If I don't live up to those expectations, if I do a bad job, if I don't live up to my own expectations, that I'll have failed. Because if I can't even like role play the type of character that I actually am in real life, then like, what good is that? And that's, I guess, like a subject I didn't ever really want to like broach or know the answer to. And I guess part of the thought of that is, well, you know, if I do a bad job like role playing as a Viking, and I know that's the wrong way to think about it. I know conceptually, like I know logically, that's the wrong way to think about role playing because no one's really judging you. That's what I tell other people all the time, but I judge myself. And my thought process is, if I do a strange job role-playing as a Viking, or I do a bad job role-playing as like the Lone Wolf Ranger or something, like at least I can distance myself and say, well, I'm not like that in real life, so it's fine. It's just a game and I role-played in a way that I didn't like. It's just a game. But if I were to actually be who I would actually be in this scenario, then if I feel odd or awkward or get criticized or get a weird look or something, that feels much more personal. And it's not. This is all my own internal problem. But I think that maybe that's the emotional vulnerability that I've actually been looking for with the character. And I think that this is how I get it, is by embracing this, maybe just for a little bit, and playing this character, myself. And really just allowing all of my personality, not just the Ranger section, not just like the aggressive Viking section, but like all of me to just like be out there on display, to interact with people without feeling the need to like curate it. But the Ranger kit is not disappearing into a cloud of smoke. I'm not cutting any content as a result of like the epiphany that I feel like I've had. But I do hope that this has helped maybe some other people who have had the same problem, where it's just like, I don't know what I want to be. It's too many choices and you get distracted by all this extra stuff. So I hope that my proposed solution to this problem is helpful to some other people. And it's been helpful for me to like sort of work through this too. It's opened up this new avenue in that if I strip away this idea that I have to look like a Witcher, or like what The Witcher 3 portrays as a Witcher, and I strip away this idea that like I have to look like I'm from Lord of the Rings, because I love Lord of the Rings and I like pretending that I'm in the Lord of the Rings. But if I strip all of that away and just go, well, what works for me, without any of that other stuff, without worrying about like what skills I see that other people use that are cool and now I want to use those ones, without having to worry about any of that external stuff, just who am I, it is going to allow me to unravel the history of a world that never existed better, because now I'm not metagaming and curating all of these choices. The choices that I pick is like, well, I have to use a longsword because this character used a long sword, or I have to use this type of sword because this other character used a sword, I'm gonna use the type of sword that I'm most comfortable with now. That's just a new avenue to look at, okay, so what needs to change about this sword in order to make it better for adventuring? It's a very inside-out approach rather than an outside-in approach. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm excited to see where this goes. Let me know if you think I look good, by the way. I will see you very soon. And in the meantime, I'd like to wish you good luck on your adventures.